Good morning, Bellator Nation. It's your boy Jack Slack, trying not to shout because there's people about. And we're here ahead of Bellator's biggest event ever, possibly. Tentpole event, as Scott Coker used to describe them. But back then he was talking about Kimbo versus Dada, co-headlined by Ken Shamrock versus Royce Gracie 3, which ended in a groin shot. Well, maybe we should do a bit of Bellator history today. But no, they've got a good fight going on with AJ McKee versus Patricio Pitbull Freire, and effectively the best featherweight outside of the UFC will be fighting on that card. It is just that he's fighting in the co-main event, Mads Burnell. And the UFC are trying to counter-program it with a pretty weak source card, but there's some good stuff on it. So I'm going to try and get 15 good minutes out of these two cards, and we'll stop when we stop, and then I'll go back to writing what I'm writing. But, the one we want to focus on first is obviously Pitbull Freire versus AJ McKee. Patricio Pitbull, if you don't know him, he's a very good fighter. The issue is that he spent his entire life claiming that he'll beat everyone in the UFC while having no interest in demonstrating that. He's one of a pair of brothers, Patricio and Patricky, and they also trained Betch Kohea, I believe, because everyone from their gym is called Pitbull. But Patricky is a lightweight who is decent, passable. His main things are like knocking out old men and appearing on other people's highlight reels. Patricio is a featherweight, but he's gone up to lightweight and he knocked out Chandler in about 13 seconds in Bellator. So wonderful fucking hitter, always has been. Has an awesome left hook, which, as we always say, great equalizer in MMA. Good wrestling, worked with Eric Albarracin, Henry Cejudo, that crew. Loves jumping on a guillotine, just jumping closed guard on a guillotine. This is the thing, like, a lot of these guys, when people do the, let's pretend that there's no difference between Bellator and the UFC standard thing, a lot of it sort of overlooks that in Bellator you can fight people like Derek Campos or whoever, and you will not confront the current meta that is going on in the UFC, like just jumping guillotines on people. A lot of what AJ McKee does is just picking up submissions in scrambles against guys who aren't that good at wrestling, or styling on people on the feet who just aren't that good at striking. The standard generally for most of these guys' opponents isn't great, but they are clearly both very good talents. So this fight is the conclusion of a Bellator tournament. These are normally disastrous, but this one's actually been pretty okay. The main disaster of this tournament was that they paused a card. I think it was one of their major cards. It might have been like Rory versus Musashi or something. But they paused a card to do a game show midway through where these guys selected where they wanted to be in the draw. And it was just abysmal. But they managed to cut enough stuff from that for the hype reel that the stuff leading up to this fight that they're releasing makes it look like it was really interesting. But Pitbull, as I was saying, interesting because he's worked with a karate coach called, I think it's Santo Montana or Manto Santana. I forget this guy's name and I'm not looking it up right now, but he's got a very interesting style because he still uses the left hook a lot, still uses the cross counter across the top of the opponent's jab, right hand over the top. That's how he caught Chandler. Those two big punches, and he has like a longer, bouncier stance now. He doesn't stand in that sort of more upright stance that he used to have, more square on. And one of the things that's strange about him is that where a lot of strikers you can say, well, this is how they go about their work and they build on this and they do that and so on, or they're looking for this opening. Patricio Pitbull, he just sort of doesn't do much and then he'll hit a perfect counter and knock the guy out. It's a very strange fighting style. But, you got shades of it in the one against Emmanuel Sanchez in his last fight where, he was meeting a guy he'd met before, but he really caught his timing quickly. And Emmanuel Sanchez was trying to do step-up left high kicks, like at the start of every exchange, and not with a lot of stank on them either. So Freire was able to do the thing that you see Robert Whittaker do. Kyoji Horiguchi is a great example of it. GSPs to do it from time to time. But if the guy steps up with a left kick, you can slide in but to the left with a really strong jab and blade your body. And that's, in various karate styles, they call that like a taisabaki Kizamizuki. Taisabaki's body movement, and Kizamizuki is a front-handed punch, but it's very common in point karate to slide up the inside of a step-up left kick with a jab. And I think he did it with a left hook a couple of times too, but he really just caught Sanchez's timing so quick. And typically it takes him a bit longer. The fight against Archuleta, which was his first in the tournament, went to the decision, bit more of a grind. But for what he's really special for is the power and the timing on the shots. He can put people out, and he reliably does it. We go through his last few, hold on. Yeah, 3 finishes in his last 4. He jumped a guillotine on Emmanuel Sanchez, which is why I remember that. But if you watch the Pedro Carvalho one, Carvalho is trying to pressure fight him. And Carvalho is a straight blast gym Ireland guy. You probably have your own views on the guys coming out of that gym, but they're a huge part of the Bellator division and fodder for Patricio Pitbull. But Carvalho tried to pressure fight him, and he just walked himself onto harder punches. It was something remarkable, to be honest. So yeah, he's got that sort of like karate boxing is what we used to call it, but it's a form of karate boxing is what he does. But really just the counterpunching is banging. And he does go to his takedowns from time to time, and they are a lot better than the frequency or the infrequency of them would lead you to believe. But AJ McKee is the opposite side of the table, he literally was. He was the opposite side of the bracket, but a really interesting character because he's just raw talent, picking up his skills, still learning them, sharpening them, honing them. But he's one of the most interesting fighters in the world, excitement-wise, despite being the son and protege of Antonio McKee, who, if you remember any of his career, you were probably asleep during it. He's just a really boring fighter, loved lay and pray. His striking was so poor that he's the only person who got TKO'd by Shinya Aoki on the feet. But he's produced this... he's produced this spawn. No, he's produced this son and fighter who's just spectacular. No one ever accused Antonio McKee of not being a great ground technician. But what he's managed to do with AJ McKee is incredible. And of course, there's other coaches and training partners and stuff involved in that. They all worked at, was it the Body Shop or something like that? There was a load of them worked together. McKee, Pico, various other people. But with McKee, again, it's not a particularly nuanced scientific approach. He doesn't come out and establish things and build to further things. He just sort of goes for whatever he fancies. So he'll throw side kicks and stuff, booming overhands off both stances. Came out in the second round of the tournament against Derek Campos. Tried to hit him with a flying knee because Jorge Masvidal Ben Askren had been a week earlier. Then threw a back kick that missed so far that he fell over and almost tore his own pec. The way that he landed, he was facing up, but his arm was facing down. and then Campos swarmed in, got on top of him, and you got to see his grappling in action, because immediately, he does this from close guard a lot. Watch some AJ McKee fights and you'll see it. When he gets on the bottom, underneath people, he uses grapevines really well, which is where, if someone's in closed guard on top, sorry, we're going to get into grappling now, but if someone's in closed guard on top and they're sitting on their heels, so their butts on their heels, you can't do it, so you have to pull them forward. But that's very common in MMA for people to want to keep you down, so they'll put their weight onto you. So the moment the guy comes forward, his arse comes off his heels. And that's when your feet can go over the top and start pulling out at his feet, hook the ankles and pull outwards. You'll have seen it loads of times before. I think it was Felder did it against Barboza and was throwing downward elbows at the top of his head. Or, 180 elbows, not downwards, because it's going parallel to the floor. Tomahawk elbows, that's what they sometimes call them. But the way that McKee uses them is similar to the way that Rob Whittaker used them against, second Whittaker reference of the day, Rob Whittaker used them against Yoel Romero, which is you get your underhook or whatever, clinch the upper body and use your lower body to pull the opponent's legs out and put them in that position where they can't really do much and they're just sort of fighting to get their legs back. And in the space you've created, you release one leg, or both if you're really good, but one leg, and you kick the leg into the space that you've created in front of their hip. So you go from a grapevine stretching their legs out to a butterfly hook, and you can use that to sweep with just the one butterfly hook if you're really explosive, or if you feel like you've got them off balance, or you can put the other butterfly hook in as Whittaker did against Romero. But against Campos, McKee immediately used it to sweep, came up wrestling. And then against Darian Caldwell in his last one, he used it to stretch Caldwell out on the ground. Because Caldwell, if he has he's got some faults generally, but one of the big ones is that he will just chill in closed guard. He's got the Chael Sonnen problem where he doesn't pass very well, so he'll sit there and possibly get submitted. You know, it hasn't happened an awful lot. Like Chael, it was every third fight he'd get submitted by someone. But Koji Horiguchi, just kept trying to get up, and Caldwell's answer was to already having the guy on the ground, but he's trying to get up, trying to finish a double leg on him basically. So he sticks his head in to his hip and grabs around the legs, and it let Koji Horiguchi whip his arm over the head and grab the guillotine eventually. And the same thing happened with McKee. He just kept trying to keep him down with his head in the middle of his chest or by his side, trying to keep him down with the double leg sort of control. McKee stretched his legs out, elbowed him in the head a few times, punched his hand through, attacked a guillotine sort of grip, but went all the way over, underhooked the other arm, pulled it up. What's called a 100%. Sometimes it's a neck crank, sometimes it goes more on the shoulder. A lot of the time it just forces the guy to turn his back. That's where you'll have seen it most. I mean, it's called 100% in the, I think it was Eddie Bravo called it the 100%, because if you get it, you're probably not going to submit the guy, but you've got 100% chance of turning the guy over or making him show his back. It's a really strong grip. It's like a half stockade or whatever. But he got a submission with it, which is really rare. But the whole time you could hear, while he was trying to set these things up, you could hear his dad shouting to him specific instructions. So they clearly got a really good working relationship. But yeah, I'm going to recommend that again. If you're a grappler or someone training MMA, go and watch AJ McKee on the bottom and watch how he uses grapevines, because the grapevines, people work out very early on their own that it's a good position to stop the opponent doing anything. But you see a ton of it in MMA, so guys get to the position, but not really using it. Whereas AJ McKee will use it to attack the upper body and also to set up butterfly hooks and attack sweeps in the lower body. But a lot of what he does is sort of opportunism, and clearly he's been practicing all of this shit from a very young age. So when he got up from underneath Derek Campos in his in the third round of their fight, and Campos had one of his legs, and it came up, and it was an ugly ass scramble. The guy barely had time to work out what was going on, and it looked like Campos was going to go out the back door behind him. And McKee just triangled his legs as fast as you like, and was like, "Yeah, cool, I'll try and choke him from here," and he did. And I think that's part of what makes him so excited. He's got a really good eye for an opportunity, and he will just go for it. I think that could come to bite him in the arse against very positionally savvy grapplers. I mean, Darian Caldwell is a positionally savvy grappler, by which I mean someone who will take you down and just grind on you and let you, throw up a triangle, go for it, and then, shame you used all that energy trying for that triangle. But Caldwell is a bit sort of, like I said, sticks his head into the guillotine if you threaten to get up. But yeah, it's against a very grindy wrestler. I'd be interested to see how McKee's very submission happy, trigger happy submission style works out for him. On the feet, again, it's a case of confidence. I don't know if the confidence is as well founded as the confidence on the mat. He can go through things on the mat because he's proven if he gets on the bottom, he's fine getting up or making stuff happen. Whereas on the feet, I feel like he's benefited a lot from fighting guys who are a little bit scared of the takedown to begin with, or just aren't that sharp on the feet altogether. He's very fast and he's very explosive. He knocked out Giorgio Chris Canyon. He knocked out Chris Canyon at Bellator 228 in the first round of the tournament in the opening seconds. He's very quick. The problem is how's that going to carry over through the rounds? Because we know that Pitbull can still crack in the later rounds. He's been in the third, fourth, fifth round multiple times in his Bellator run now. And I think that's kind of what intrigues me here. AJ McKee is like an offensive whirlwind, and he seems to have the talent and athleticism to basically make it work and overwhelm a lot of his opponents. I'm quite intrigued to see if he, one of the things that I think he lacks, or I haven't seen evidence of so far, is an ability to sort of read an opponent and work to them. And, granted, he hasn't had to, but it's almost the polar opposite of that Pitbull Frere patience. I can say, there's not an awful lot of things that we can grab onto and say, Pitbull does this, this, and this, but he still hits these people with counterpunches eventually. And part of that is his amazing patience, and he must be building up a working knowledge of what his opponents are doing to be able to come and knock him out in the third round. He finished Dan Strauss in the fourth round, I think it was. Went the distance with Sanchez the first time, went the distance with Whiteshell. He's a guy who's quite happy to go long, and I haven't seen an awful lot of that from AJ McKee. And that's another interesting thing about it. Like, AJ McKee, if you look at the stylistic matchup, I mean, it's the case with anyone, but AJ McKee's quite rangy for the weight class anyway. But Pitbull is sawn off in this weight class. Everyone he fights is taller and longer than him. But a lot of what AJ McKee does or has done on the feet in his last fights that I've seen isn't really built to bring that to lever. They'll throw the odd sidekick or something like that, but it's like a big power step-up sidekick. It's not like a consistently keeping the range and just poking him and keeping him back sort of sidekick. I think it'd be interesting to see if I were looking for something to annoy Pitbull early, I'd say southpaw for periods and just check the lead hand, because the Pitbull left hook is such a pain, and even his jab, he's a very short guy, but he throws a powerful left straight. Again, like I said with Emmanuel Sanchez, just sort of gliding up the inside of your strikes. So checking the lead hand, making him really have to reach for the rear hand, because again, very short reach. He's got to come to you if he's going to land his rear hand off the bat. And then throwing kick after kick, just kick his body, legs, head, everything that's available, and then hit takedowns when he moves in to close the distance on you. For Pitbull, just go with what's been working so far. Wait, hit him when you can, throw in the odd takedown. I think it's a very compelling matchup. And really, the best outcome of this is that the winner gets on the mic afterwards and says, I've fought the rest, now I want to fight the best. I'm leaving, see ya. But it won't. What will happen afterwards is the winner will fight the rest of the guys that he's already fought in the division. The winner will probably stay in Bellator forever, which is sad. But, AJ McKee's got a long career ahead of him. How old is Pitbull now? Because he's been around forever. He's 34, not too bad. There's still a chance that he does a Chandler. Honestly, losing here might be the best chance of getting him in the UFC. And just to be clear to any, I'm going to get a drop-off in the listenership today, but there might be some people who come in just to listen to Bellator podcasts. But the reason I say that is because I want to watch them fight the people who are the best, not because I want the UFC to succeed beyond and Bellator to fail. I would rather just watch everyone in one place fighting each other. But then the co-main event I already did my joke about, but Mads Burnell is fighting Emmanuel Sanchez. Interesting. I mean, this one is going to, has the potential to change my view of a few things, because I don't rate Emmanuel Sanchez terribly highly. And I rate Mads Burnell as one of the most underrated fighters in MMA right now. He's very, very good. The UFC cut him on I think it was a 1-2 streak in the UFC. But hang on, I'm going to check that. Yes, he lost to Michel Prazeres in his UFC debut, but that was at lightweight. Obviously, Prazeres, I think he's been all the way up to welterweight. He's enormous. Or rather, he's stocky as fuck. He's a fire hydrant. And he just took Burnell down. Burnell couldn't get out from underneath him. Burnell then went to featherweight, beat Mike Santiago, fought Arnold Allen, who again is hot shit right now, and beat him up for 2 and a bit rounds. And then fell into a front choke. But that was such an impressive performance that everyone was like, oh, got to keep your eyes on Mads Burnell. It was such a strange time to cut him too, because it was apparent that Arnold Allen was very good. It's like if they cut Max Holloway after he lost to Conor McGregor. At the time, everyone was aware that both of those guys had a lot of potential. So yeah, he bounced around Cage Warriors for a while, won their featherweight title, Japanese necktied 2 guys, and then he fought in Bellator, beat Darko Banovic, and then he fought Sal Rogers for the best European featherweight outside the UFC. And he manhandled Rogers. It was very impressive. But if you don't know him, really fun boxing. Not infallible on the feet, but moves his head a lot. Takes a lot of inspiration from old timers of boxing. Likes to dip, slip, and then throw short counter right straights and dip in on the legs. If you saw his fight with Arnold Allen, obviously Arnold Allen, southpaw, so a bit different, but he kept doing the outside slip, and then he'd pause a beat and then throw the right straight, and then he'd do the same thing again but drop on the legs. He was really giving Allen fits in that fight. But the other thing that he's very famous for is the Japanese necktie, which is same grip as a D'Arce, or similar grip to a D'Arce. Start is the same as a D'Arce. It's basically, you go for the D'Arce, you can't get your full grip for the D'Arce, so you slide your belly behind their head and you hook their leg, and it turns their head sideways most of the time, and you get basically what is, we talk about it sometimes, a grobit or a front face lock, very old school wrestling neck crank. But you get that with the arm in and the leg trapped, so it's great. But he is the king of it. He looks for it actively. It sort of was developed as a follow-up to the D'Arce. If the opponent had like unshakable posture and you couldn't like crumple them over as you want to for a D'Arce, but Burnell goes for it instead of the D'Arce. He looks for that actively. He's got 4 wins by it on his record, which is stunning. 1 D'Arce, 1 Anaconda. So that front headlock position is a Burnell special. If you watched his guard passing against Sal Rogers, it was fantastic. Sal Rogers was trying to play butterfly hooks, which most people in MMA are, because it's a good way of getting up or at least turning into the single or doing something to get yourself off your back. But Burnell was like prime BJ Penn in that fight. Just stretching out butterfly hooks, stepping over them, mounting him over the butterfly hooks. Really slick fucking stuff. Emmanuel Sanchez, very kicky guy. Loves his kicks, loves stepping up into them. But apparently a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I believe. I haven't seen an awful lot of him on the ground. Mainly what I'm going from with Emmanuel Sanchez is the 2 fights against Pitbull. Did decently the first time. Throwing lots of kicks really did seem to throw Pitbull off. One of the things about being a short guy, generally, even though you're making up for it with power or muscle or whatever, you're thick and heavy at that weight class. One of the disadvantages is that the guy doesn't have to bring his knee or his kick very very high up to get to you, so it becomes a lower effort technique for them. If Pitbull were throwing high kicks at Emmanuel Sanchez, that would be a lot more tiring and something that he'd have to like step up into, probably run up to get the flexibility going. But Emmanuel Sanchez was very good at just throwing lots and lots of kicks at Pitbull and really annoying him. But he's tricky and he's tough and he goes the distance more often than not. The only time he's been finished. Hold on, I'm going to check. Yeah, the only time he's been finished is the most recent one against Pitbull. So a finish for Burnell here would look amazing. And you've got to think, the other guys in the tournament probably not getting next shot at the winner of this main event. Probably Mads Burnell, or if Sanchez wins and Pitbull wins, probably not doing that one again. But if Mads Burnell wins and either of the other guys win in the main event, probably next in line. But this Emmanuel Sanchez stuff is betraying my sort of limited view of Bellator. I've been following Pitbull, I've been following AJ McKee because I had him down as big potential. My familiarity with Emmanuel Sanchez is basically due to his fights with Pitbull, and he fought Pat Curran back in the day, who I was a big fan of. But yeah, fuck it. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast and not Bellator Weekly with Big John and Josh Thompson, you probably know as little as me about Bellator. Oh, great moment on their podcast the other week where Josh Thompson's talking about taking HGH, and he accidentally says, when I was taking HGH, and Big John goes, when you were, and he gets proper angry at him before realising that's what he said. And it was so funny because this is the dude who hired Victor Conti to be like, yeah, I got the guy who was the head of Balco Labs to make sure I'm really not taking any drugs. He literally name-checked him after winning fights. Oh, such a good look. But, yeah, what else is on this Bellator card? Usman Nurmagomedov is fighting some guy with a 12-6 record. You know what they want to happen there. Brent Primus versus Islam Mamedov. Not seen Mamedov before. Not a huge fan of Primus. Gota Yamauchi is fighting... How is Gota Yamauchi, the 25-5 fighter, fighting a guy with 6 fights on his record? Who knows? What else is good on this card? Do you know what? Do not care for the rest of that card. What's going on the UFC's half-assed effort? Main event, Uriah Hall versus Sean Strickland. That could be fun. Uriah Hall, the counter fighter who hates pressure. He loves setting up counter back kicks and counter flying knees and shit like that, but he wants you to come at him a couple of times around at the same sort of pace. The interesting thing here is that Strickland accumulates great volume and stays on people, but he's not going to run you ragged. It's not like Paulo Costa running at you trying to kick your head off every second of the fight. So can he crowd him? Can he overwhelm him? Should be interesting. The way that Strickland's sort of hung around on the end of boxing range against a lot of his opponents leads me to think that Hall has a chance coming back with counter kicks, as in like waiting on the end of the combination and throwing a kick back. Whether that's like just a regular kick or a wheel kick or some shit like that. Strickland really likes to stay just on the end of people's reach. If you watch his one against, was it Jack Marshman? The Welsh lad, where he's like, why won't you fall? He also likes to talk in cringe. He's very fluent in cringe. But, yeah, I mean, that's an okay fight. Honestly, yeah, on its own, pretty decent fight. What else is good on this card? Hani Yaya's in action. All you need to know. Brian Barberena's fighting Jason Whip. Okay. Wu Yanan is fighting Nico Montano. Nico Montano famously was ducked by Valentina Shevchenko. One of two women ducked in that division by Valentina Shevchenko, the other being Sajara Eubanks. The Grits is back. That's good, because that's the Grits back properly, because this last one he was coming back off like a 2-year layoff, and he just got murdered by Alexander Hernandez. So hopefully he gets back in the win column. Jinyu Frason, which is good for the weigh-ins, but not necessarily for the excitement value of the card. Hey, Kai Kamaka III, I like him. Always good scrambly action on the ground. So yeah, I think I got more than it deserved out of those cards, but we'll watch the Bellator. Well, I mean, are they on at the same time? I'll watch them both anyway, but, you know, probably better off watching the top end of the Bellator one. But when they got Brent Primus versus whoever, just switch over and watch Hani Yaya. That's, you know, you're always going to have a good time. Even if he's losing, he's pulling himself underneath people and trying to sweep them. Right, I reckon that'll do us for today. I'm going to get out of here and finish writing some stuff. I will catch you on Monday. Promising Patricio and Given and Patrici bless.